Chat. Sorry to break it to some of y'all. My job isn't to be nice to yous, not even in the slightest. And for that, I usually get karma. I would call it at least my definition of karma. Like I'm feeling this little peck I got right now, and it feels like less than I normally would have. Um, Not even sure if I got a lighter, to be honest. Not even sure I got a lighter. Bro, do I really not have a lighter? Oh, yeah, I do. I'm about to say. I'm about to say. You hear it? Nah, in fact, no, this is gonna be simple though, bro. I ain't gonna lie, I didn't pay my Wall Street Journal, see, cause they supposed to give me 3 months free. And nigga, what you mean you charging me and this is my free month? I mean, I'm gonna get it back, but today's just chess. I'm going to listen to that Myron podcast with Andrew Tate and Nick Fuentes. I had some thoughts on that. I wanted to re-listen. I should be reading shit though, but hey, I'm just trying to like refresh on like past topics for real. That I was a little bit late to the ball game with. You know what I'm saying? I was late to the ball game. Um, yeah, a young nigga was late to the ball game, bro. So I got some catching up to do as far as like what to think about that guy, Nick Fuentes. You know, I like him so far though, for real, for real. I mean, I disagree with him heavily in the sense where like I don't believe him when he says that he's a Christian nationalist and he's a believer of a white America, because like your last name's Fuentes, so like you're literally like like your bloodline is destroyed to convey Mexican. You know what I'm saying? From that standpoint, like looking at the name. But so that's why I don't really believe that he's a white. Like I believe he wants white kids, probably. Like, you know what I'm saying, a white wife. But that whole white America and Christians should be in power, I just think that's a talking point. Yeah, yeah. So I don't really believe it. That's why I be trying to listen to him and see am I just thinking that? Like, am I like just bored? Like, you know what I'm saying? Or is that the truth? Is he hiding a hidden message? Is he a reincarnated Fred Hampton, MLK, Malcolm X? I don't know. But it is weird that he's fucking white and that nigga's last name is definitely Fuentes. Like I've never and like he looks white. Like cuz looks like a white fucking like he looks like that white nigga you fucking just hate. That smug nigga. And then like on top of that, like allegedly he's short. Like he don't look like a tall nigga from like his like podcast or nothing, but I mean it's hard to tell height from like when you're looking at that. Like like when you're watching like stuff like this, like y'all might think I'm short just because I'm not projecting my voice. I'm not in a good like direction of the camera, and I'm not sitting, yeah. But I'm actually real tall. But I think how you present yourself can like make your figure bigger, if you know what I mean. But yeah, and apparently he's like short, which would like piss me off even more because it's like I pride myself on trying not to be violent and like hit people. Like not saying I would like hit him because he makes me angry or say nothing, but it's like it make you want to hit somebody like that so much more because like you're so small and just smart. Fuck you. Like you know what I mean? Like I'd take that brain and do what the fuck I want to it if this was fucking primitive days. You know what I mean? I mean not saying like but like if I had to, like like for instance, like if we're intellectual enough to like have that kind of discussion during like primitive days, like I would possibly do something about that because like back then it's like it's like back then it's like you thinking power even more like you know what I'm saying, so you thinking on a big scale with small people in a sense, like if you like the only example I can give is like the Persian Empire, like nigga, The Persian Empire was huge, like the biggest empire, but only like 20% of them niggas was like Persian. Like the whole empire, like 1 in 20 subjects they say was actually Persian, which is like, crazy. If you ask me, like I think it's like fucking crazy. Like if I don't got like an analogy today, I guess, because I don't know like the statistics of like human population that well. Not, I mean, I ain't gonna say that well, but like I don't know, like I wouldn't be able to say like, okay, there's one out of every 30 people, there's one black person. Like, I don't know that off the top, for real, for real. I mean, I could look it up easy, Chat GPT, but that's not like my expertise. But when I was learning about the Persian Empire, bro, I'm rolling up, by the way, too. Y'all can't even see it. I'm rolling up, by the way. Y'all want to see it? Y'all want to see it? Y'all like my voice? It turn you on? Bro, chill. Nah, I learned about the Persian Empire, and I didn't like in depth learn it too great. Like I was like really just dashing around listening to like a YouTube, like without even seeing like the pictures and like like the video portrays like where everything was when they're like naming some of the places and stuff. I mean, I'd have to go back and watch that, John. I mean, maybe I might watch that, John, one day on this fucking stream. I don't know. Y'all could let me know if that shit like is an accurate depiction. You know what I'm saying? Nah, I'm finna get this shit for real, start in a min-week. Get some trust cranked open. I just want to roll this goddamn L, bro. Niggas had a bad Sunday, bro. Could have been worse. Could have been like way worse. But bro, like this was definitely not one of my best Sundays, and it wasn't really nothing I could control, to be honest. Like I definitely like just got smacked in the mid. But like things could always be worse. Like when I say always, I mean always. It could always be worse. Like no matter how bad it is, like there could be a worse situation on top of that. Like your bitch getting fucked. Your fucking your fucking house getting destroyed from a fucking tornado and you don't even live in tornado area. Like you feel me? Like it could always be worse than what it is. So I tried to keep a good positive attitude with that in mind. However, bro, not only did these fucking Eagles lose, gang, like not only did my niggas lose, but like the propaganda, the AJ Brown's upset, the Devon, like it's hard to decipher at this big age of mine, like how real the narrative is, or if they're just saying that to get people thinking that way, and now like the algorithm's the algorithm, like believe it or not, these football niggas, these NFL, NBA niggas are looking at the same shit that we're looking at on our Twitters and our Instagrams, and like like they got the same minds and thoughts like us. So somebody like AJ Brown, like it's hard to tell, like is he really convinced that like he needs a Hall of Fame kind of prime? And I'm only saying that because realistically, he stay on the Eagles and they keep winning. I mean, at this rate, he not gonna be a Hall of Fame receiver just because the stats don't show it. Like Super Bowls don't really play too much of a part. Like team gaming, yeah, but it's hard for me to really decipher if that's real and he's not just upset in general that like he's not getting the ball and stuff, or if it's like yo like I need it now, like because like when you got a good thing going, bro, like at least in sports, dude, like it's fucking fucked how quick they're ready to turn the tables and like make it seem like shit is shit, bro. The Eagles have been fucking rock hard for fucking 3 years in a fucking row. Yeah, we lost the Super Bowl 2 years ago, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like we're 4-1 right now. So what made me so upset about today was the fact that like I can't decipher whether this media shit is like gonna be like the story of the Eagles for real. Like they had a good 2 good years and they couldn't figure it out and dispersed, or are they gonna thug it out for the city and keep trying to win? Because I feel like we literally need AJ Brown to fucking win games, bro. Like, I don't care what nobody says. He don't touch the ball. This, that, and the third. Having him on the field, anybody that knows ball, that got elite ball knowledge, having a weapon on the field, especially somebody like AJ Brown, a big, physical, fast, tall, catchable, like good hands receiver, like that changes your defense because you got to put some kind of emphasis whatever he's doing. So even if he don't touch the ball, he's very useful on the team to me. But obviously, the regular incel retards, dipshits, won't agree. They won't even see that. They'll fuck AJ. Well, let's get Max Crosby for AJ. It's like, dude, fuck out of here, dude. fucking white ginger for AJ fucking. My bad, folks. Ghetto Mike, my bad. But yeah, I'll change the topic to that. But basically, like, when you look at a Victor, like, there's a lot more pieces to it that you don't see. A lot of effort, a lot of long extra effort from people and things that you don't have in mind, and things that are just natural that are lucky. So football, all them things like come into play. So I really hope that niggas aren't about to bully the Eagles into separating, but I would not be surprised. It wouldn't be the first time I've seen it. And last time we had a situation similar to this, and I hate to say it, because it's not blaming our coach now, but it was with Chip Kelly. Like, dude was straight up racist and said, fuck Deshaun Jackson, LaShawn McCoy, fuck that, get them out of here. Gang affiliation, fucking shady, fuck that, goodbye. Ruined the fucking Eagles and just dipped and got, like, what, do you go to Oregon or some shit? And got, like, another, like, established job, like, you know? Them industries are cutthroat. It's like, it's almost like, you know, like, every industry at this point, not every, but mainstream ones, like, fucking NFL, NBA, like, rigged, not rigged, like nigga, they got it under control. That's what I'm gonna say. You know, ain't nothing changing that's not on their account. Like something that I recently be bringing up a lot is the fact that Instagram just out of nowhere said, yo, you got a public page. Well, you are not allowed to live stream if you don't got more than 1,000. Bro, my phone is on angles, bro. Bro, I need to update my shit, bro. Like, your phone shouldn't just not work if you ain't updated, bro. That should not be the case of how it goes, bro. There's no reason why it's like my phone needs an update, and now like first off, I find it crazy how it's like, nigga, I bought a new phone last year and I'm already out of storage, and it's like, bro, it's to the point where I can't even send pictures. It's like, dog, like, can you just give me, I don't know, maybe a little bit more fucking room in my phone? I mean, I'm sure you got it.
Saying about, he's
You know. Let's listen to this from the start. Let's hit the L.
point, I think we're in agreement. So I think that probably by the end of it, we're going to be on the same side on this. So, but yeah, we'll throw some stuff in there just to make it fun. We got to make it fun. So maybe we'll find something to disagree about.
Yeah, I mean, my basic philosophy on it all, and I guess we can talk about it. And I feel, I try and stay very much in my lane. People think of me as unhinged, and I like to argue that I'm actually the absolute opposite. And the Groyper movement's not my movement. It's yours. You're on a generational run. You're doing fantastic work. The internet is yours. Twitter is yours. That can't be debated. And you should be very...
Was this before the Nelk Boys Net Yahoo podcast? I don't think so. There's no way. Yeah, I don't think it's before
proud
that.
of yourself for that. When I said what I said, and if I read it here verbatim, I said the Groypers speak like a conquered people. The point I was making is that I feel, and this isn't even necessarily your fault, because in all movements, there's going to be varying degrees of extremity and extremism inside of it. But what often happens is, especially with me, I will say something often about women or white people reproducing, something along those lines. And the Groypers will jump in to call me a nigger and say I work for the Jews, as opposed to understand the point I'm trying to make. When I say that, it doesn't matter what laws we pass, it doesn't matter what legislation goes through the Congress, if white people don't have babies, you're soon to be replaced. The answer I get is, but the Jews made the white women not listen to us. And my answer to it is, well, now you sound like a conquered class. You sound like a conquered people. If the Jews are really trying so hard to subvert you from having children, then the correct answer is to have as many children as possible. The correct answer to my tweet is, they tried to stop me from having a bunch of white kids, but I did have a bunch of white kids. Look what I've achieved, irregardless of their attempts to subvert me, because I cannot be controlled. And there's a big difference between noticing a problem and using a problem as a cure-all excuse.
I don't know how well
to your
this
own
plan
personal
right here is going to work,
circumstances.
but
And
I'm
I've spoken
improvising right now.
absolutes because I often do. And I said, no Jew stops you going to the gym, which is a massive oversimplification. But the point I was making was, there's a lot. Have I gone?
No, you're here. You're here. Just turn your camera on.
Have I gone?
Hit the thing
My
to turn
camera is
your...
on.
Hold on, let me... 'Cause it
Dog,
was
Myron,
lagging,
you
that's why I
fucking
was,
ghetto ass bitch. No, I figured it out though. You really just gotta had a like he got another screen up of the videos and like he probably unclicked that. But when I was doing my first episode and I had Nick on there, that's what was going on. But Myron, you fucking ghetto bastard. You should have been figured that out.
Okay, there
Yeah,
you
we
go.
got some lag issues, I think.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but yeah. Okay, you're back on.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So, and Nick, I don't know if you could like turn your camera off, then turn it back on. I think that might fix the lag. But go ahead, Andrew.
Okay.
They can still hear you guys though. Fine. I think that fixed it. It's less.
I
lag.
hope this is a smart move.
Okay.
I'm improvising
Well, yeah, the
hard
point
right
I was
now,
making
for
is
real.
that, we have to make a
I don't
very
wanna get in a
important
little
distinction
trap.
here. And if we're going to notice there's a problem with influence of the American government, which I've never disagreed with, which in fact I have spoken up for and agreed with you on basically everything and promoted all of your clips saying exactly that. There is a large distinction between noticing a problem and highlighting it
All right, I
and
think I'm in a
combating
good
against
spot
it
there.
and using it as an excuse to fail in life. And I feel like some of the groypers, not all, some sound a bit like the blacks talking about the system. And I know plenty of those. And that's the point I was trying to make, that nobody can stop you winning if you want to win. That's the point I was making. I don't have a large problem with the movement.
Oh damn, he going.
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean, I do agree. I don't think it's the groypers though.
Oh.
I think there does need to be a distinction made between what we would call colloquially on the right wing, we call them the Wignats. I don't know if you've ever heard that term before, but we call them Wignats. It stands for Wigger nationalist. Wigger meaning, and the reason we call them Wiggers as opposed to groypers or something else is because you're right. I would say that what is typified by black people is this sort of victim mentality that says, oh, is it because I'm black? Oh, you only have a problem with me because I'm black. Oh, they're keeping the black man down. All this kind of stuff. The reason we call them Wigger nationalists is because they have kind of adopted the worst aspects of black identity politics, which is to say, oh, you have a problem with me because I'm white? Oh, they're keeping the white man down. Oh, well, they'll just call us racist. Well, they'll just call us Nazis. And my attitude towards the problem is always, they can't stop us. If you go like I did and tell the truth directly and articulately, and you don't let them suppress you, at the end of the day, they really can't stop you. I think I'm living proof of that. And I encourage all my followers, don't make excuses. Don't go around and say, oh, it's because I'm white. Oh, well, they'll never let you say that. They'll never let you do that. They'll say you're racist. I say, try and stop us. What do you mean let? They're not going to let us. We're going to do whatever we want. And so I tell my followers, get as intelligent as you can, read books, learn languages, learn a musical instrument, go to the gym, get physically fit. I tell people, get into the best college you can. And if you're not interested in going that route and networking, then be an entrepreneur, make as much money as possible, infiltrate politics. But I guess where I would diverge slightly, if we're to get into, because I think we're in total agreement on that, and I'm with you 100%. I just would say I'm sure there's some groypers that are saying something like that. I would call that Wignat. This like chest beating, oh, it's because I'm white, we're keeping the white man down. You know, we're not taking the white man down, but we have to be worthy of our ancestors as white men and say, we don't need permission. We don't need to ask for permission. We're not going to let them get in our way. They're going to do bullshit to us, but we have to find a way to overcome. I guess where I would diverge slightly, because I hear this all the time, and directionally, I suppose I agree. But, you know, when you talk about the birth rates, you're 100% right that the birth rates are a problem. The white people are not having kids. And if the white people don't have kids, it's over. We're going to be replaced. Yep. And I hear people say this to me all the time. They say, you need to have kids. And I plan on doing that. I plan on getting married and having kids at some point. I guess where I would depart, even from my fellow white people who say this, is that there is something structural happening where I don't believe the answer is that we're going to tell ourselves we all need to start having kids. Because how many people are even political? How many people are aware of the white genocide? How many people are going to have kids as a response to this problem? It's a very, very tiny number. And it's not to say that we shouldn't contribute to the solution, but it is to say that we fundamentally must engage in politics. It's sort of like chess. You know, all the pawns could simultaneously wake up one day and say, we need to have more white babies. We need to have kids. I think that's highly unlikely. We need to strike at the king. We need a regime. We need to engage in politics. And I don't just mean like voting. I mean, we need to become resourceful, influential, rich, run media, be entrepreneurs, you know, pay politicians to run for office. And we need to use politics to change society. Because when you look at the strategy of like the Jews as an example, they're 2% of the population, but they have this extraordinary influence. That's because they go for the locus of power. They're in LA, they're in New York City, they're in DC. These are the most powerful cities in the world. They're in San Francisco, they're in El Segundo. They're striking at the locus of power. And from the locus of power proceeds the cultural standards, proceeds these dominant narratives in the education system from academia. And so I'm really a believer, not in as much saying, oh, white people in general need to have more kids. Certainly that's a good thing. But it's more like I want the most brilliant elite human capital, the smartest, richest, best white people to become as powerful as possible, take over the institutions, and from the institutions promulgate a message of fertility, racial solidarity, national solidarity, and national consciousness. That's kind of where I'm at. And I don't think you'd even disagree, but it's just kind of like going a little step further on that.
No, I agree with you, actually, completely. And culture is the driving force behind all things. You know, I often comment on white people, black people. I'm in a unique position because I am a race mixed individual, which pisses off a large percentage of the internet. But this is how I was born, and that's how it goes. And there's not much I can do about it.
Am I serious?
But I would argue, besides yourself,
it took me that long.
There's probably no one else with a platform as large as mine who speaks up for white people ever.
Dude gave me the checkmate.
One of the problems with extreme right-wing white people is we have this infinitely divisible, constantly searching for more and more based to the point where no matter how much you do for them or try to help them, you're going to eventually not be based enough for them. And this is seen amongst white people in general. If we removed all the black people from Western civilization today, within 30 years, the Germans would be fighting the Italians again. I mean, that's what happened. Only 30 or 40 years ago, the Irish and English were blowing each other up. And now Ireland and England's both full of asylum seekers from the boats. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. So this infinitely divisible, this constant search for the more and more based version, I actually think in some ways subverts the whole movement. The movement you've launched is so fantastic. The cultural effect you've had is also fantastic. But the biggest threat to the movement is not going to be external. It's going to be internal. And there is a percentage of people, no matter what I say, in defense of you, in defense of white people, in defense of Western civilization, come along and say, because my dad is black, who was a chess genius, by the way, is the only reason I'm even smart, that I'm a piece of shit and I need to be kicked out or I need to die or whatever. And I don't care because truthfully, I think it's hilarious. But when you have these cartoon anon accounts constantly going to a deeper and deeper level of everyone's a Jew, everything is this, everything is that, and they can't even get along with somebody who is clearly on their side in the larger fight, this is how you're going to end up losing the fight in the long run. And I think that's where some of the problem comes from, which again is not even your fault, but that's the problem with that movement as a whole. And I'm going to say one thing from a personal perspective. I do feel like there is a degree of ungratefulness. Once again, this is not your fault, but there's an ungratefulness amongst people and an ungratefulness amongst the internet. I remind the internet on October 8th, against all legal advice, I told Piers Morgan it was a genocide. I stuck up and was anti-Israel on Piers Morgan on October 8th, before it was cool on the internet, very much like you. Now everybody does it. You did it before it was cool. I did it before I was cool. Anti-Semitism is a crime in Europe. They put me back on house arrest. I was locked in my house for 11 months because of what I said on a podcast. And now they turn up and tweet underneath that I'm a Jew. And I just think if that's how we're going to operate as a movement, we're only ever going to be a laughingstock to our enemies. And I agree with you about the locus of power. You're completely correct. And I think it's a multifaceted attack. But we have to be very careful here, because if I owned a farm and all the sheep worked out that I had a slaughterhouse, and all they did all day was say, that's a slaughterhouse, he's got a slaughterhouse, but they still walked into it, I wouldn't really care. There has to be a point where you don't obey what I want you to do. If they're trying to stop you from reproducing, then you must reproduce. If they're trying to beat you down so you don't make money because of usury, you need to make money. If they don't want you to be brave, you need to be brave. You need to look at their exact playbook, and instead of tweeting it at people, instead of accusing every single person who doesn't have an Anon cartoon account of being a Jew, you need to do the absolute opposite of what they want you to do. And I believe that's how we win. That's how your movement and you become president of the United States. I think that's better for you and the movement as a whole. So when I made that tweet, that Groypers speak like a defeated people, that's because I'll say something, and I speak in absolutes. I absolutely do, and I think trolling is hilarious. And I make it clear that, you know, a white man, I say white man can't get a kid out of a woman unless he buys her 2 houses and 3 cars and a nanny, ha ha ha. The Somalian can get 11 kids out of Fatima without a job. And I make a joke of it. All of their replies is,
like
well,
this,
now
bro.
you're a Jew, you're a race-mixing Jew, you work for the Jews. And I just think that that is counterproductive to the good fight and counterproductive to your movement. That's my actual view.
At the same time, though, you got to recognize that if you're going to rage bait, you can't really be mad when people get mad. You know what I mean?
Mad. I think it's hilarious. Yeah. I think it's funny. I mean, I literally, I'm real nigger Tay. I call myself a nigger all day long. I think it's funnier than it. I love trolling. I'm all for it. I'm just saying that if we're going to try and have a serious political movement here, then calling every single person a Jew because of some tedious or tenuous link, I think is disingenuous. I think that, and again, this is just my personal view, and I don't know enough. Since I got released from house arrest after 3 years in my house in February, I haven't been online that much. And I noticed you said I didn't weigh in on the Candace Tucker thing. I'm not versed enough to truly weigh in. I haven't seen every video. I haven't seen all of it. I haven't seen the back and forth. I've been with my children living my life. However, I would argue that Tucker has red-pilled a lot of people who would never watch your show about very important things that are happening in the American government that you'd agree with. I would say the same for Candace. I think of them on the good side of the fight. And perhaps this is going to get me in trouble. I think of them as good people trying to do the best thing they can, which is tell their version of the truth. And they're by and large on our side. And I think this infinite, divisible, constant infighting, constant looking for who's the most base, constantly saying, well, he's done 99 things right, but this one thing makes him a Jew. I just think it's holding us back by and large. That's my personal view, but it's not my movement. So I'm just saying what I see it as from the outside.
Well, and, you know, maybe that's where the disagreement lies, because I talked with Alex Jones about this yesterday. We didn't even plan on talking about it, but he brought it up. Obviously, I'm in this big feud with both Candace and Tucker Carlson right now, and I see it being characterized on Twitter by some people as infighting. And I would agree with you. I would tend to agree with you that if I were an outside observer, I would look at Candace and Tucker and myself, and I would think we're all on the same side. We're all pushing in the same direction. Certainly, we're all criticizing Israel. We're all against the war in Iran and the rest of it. And that's what I would tend to think. And yet, when I went out and did Candace's show, instead of talking about what we had in common, she wanted to talk about all the things that we had apart. And she in particular wanted to press me on if I really hated Jews and if I was really a racist. So that confounded me, because if I'm an outside objective observer, maybe without all the information, I would say, wait, aren't Candace Tucker and Nick on the same side? But being me, I went to do her show with my suit on, ready to talk about the Iran war, the neocons, all this kind of stuff. And she's pressing me, why do you hate Dave Smith? Is it because he's Jewish? Do you hate Jews for being Jewish? Are you a racist? Is that why you're against race mixing? And so I finished the interview, and not to relitigate the whole thing, but this is just a summary of it. I finished the thing and I get on my show and I say, it's weird she's putting it behind a paywall. I said, and also I'm unhappy with what we talked about. I thought this was an olive branch. Clearly it was some kind of like a lecture. I thought she was having me out to maybe extend an olive branch and connect. And instead I got a wagging finger from a woman in my face, which I don't really care for. And then, as if to make matters better, she goes with Tucker Carlson. And Tucker, who, you know, me and him have a bit of a history, he calls me a basement-dwelling, weird gay kid. He says I'm a CIA agent. He unloads this personal attack on me. And so, yeah, I would not characterize that as infighting. I would say, to me, that looks like a coordinated attack on me, and it's not purity spiraling. It is coming from them in the other direction, saying that I'm too extreme. In fact, that's literally what Tucker said. Tucker said that I am a crazy anti-Semite who is trying to make them look bad by being too ideologically pure. So, you know, maybe you've been away for a long time, you don't know what's going on, but it wasn't me coming at them for being soft. No, they were coming at me for being too extreme. And that's where I have to defend myself and say, wait a second, you're calling me a CIA agent? Your fucking dad was in the CIA. I said this to Tucker on this big show. A week later, Elon Musk is echoing what Tucker Carlson said, calling me a Fed. And it's in the context of this Matrix attack. I don't know what else you call that. That then you came on Twitter and said the thing about the Groypers. I think that's why they took it a certain way, because what it looked like was coordination. I don't know if you're in on that or not. I don't believe you were, but certainly something weird is going on. And it all coincided with what you said, which is, I'm on this generational run. I have broken containment. I'm going mainstream. Now, I would like to do a show with Tucker and talk about our similarities and differences. I would have liked to do that with Candace Owens, but it seems like they're trying to keep me out. They're trying to push me aside. As far as the movement's concerned, I'd like to be on the same page with them, but, you know, they don't feel that way about me. So, you know, I don't know. What's your thoughts on that whole situation?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. And like I said, I'm not fully versed on all of it. I guess there's two ways I can answer that question. At a certain point, and of course, you're a full-grown man, you make your own decisions. I'll be very clear that I like Candace. She's always been very respectful to me. I think she's fantastic at her job. I actually think she's amazing at what she does. I have nothing bad to say about her. I think that when people were saying the Bridget series was irrelevant, I think that's disingenuous. I think it's actually very relevant to find out if the most prominent country in the European Union is being run by a pedophile and his dad. I also think it's hilarious that she trolled Macron into having a meltdown. I think that trolling's funny, and I think it's funny. I don't know how anyone doesn't find that funny, that legal letters are flying around the world. I mean, you're saying they attacked you. I respect it. There's two ways to answer that question. The first thing you can do, and you can make your own decision as a full-grown man, is it about you and your own personal feelings, which it's allowed to be, by the way, or is it about the movement by and large as a whole? Because I've sat down with people who have come out for me guns blazing, but I believe they were 65% on the same side as me. And I defended myself, and I thought, you know what? They're doing more harm than good. And instead of arguing about the color of the wallpaper inside the castle, let's defeat the orcs at the gate first. And then we can start arguing about how we're going to decorate this room. But that's a decision that you can make personally. I'm not saying what they did is right, and I'm not saying what you did is wrong. That's a decision that you can make. I understand that my timing now with that context would be suspect. I understand that absolutely. But I have nothing against Candace and Tucker. And the whole CIA agent dad thing, I'd actually like to address that as well. One of the reasons why that holds no weight with me is my father was in the intelligence services. And now there's a whole bunch of people spamming my account saying that I'm a Jewish asset because my father was CIA. But I've been very honest and open about the fact that he was a translator and he spoke 3 languages. And I was also open about the fact that he was discharged without a pension for not following orders, ended up living in his car being a traveling chess player. And I had to grow up in a homeless hostel in Luton, England, fighting Kosovans at the age of 11. So if there's some big intel agency op going on, I never got any money from it. And our family grew up destitute. And I grew up in the worst area in England. And now they're throwing me in jail at random. So for anyone to believe that I'm some kind of intelligence op or a Fed is disingenuous. And another thing, and I want to make this clear, when I talk with you about issues, I'm very honest and open about the fact that you have swaths of knowledge I don't have. I don't want to get pulled into muddy waters where I'm in a situation and we're discussing something I know nothing about. You can start talking about the financing of a particular senator, and I don't know. So I kind of operate on feels, you know? Do I think you're a Fed? Truthfully, in my heart, no. Do I think Candace and Tucker are Feds? In my heart, no. When someone says, Tucker's a Fed, his dad was in the CIA, I say, my dad was in the CIA, and we were fucking broke. And he got discharged, and he died destitute with $15 in his pocket. So I don't buy any of that. What I do think is perhaps there's some ego involved, perhaps we're at a pivotal moment in culture. Perhaps maybe there is a degree of them trying to assert dominance over you or trying to show that, you know, they're not scared of your influence. That's all possible and all very real.
Up, bro. Crazy.
I can only answer what I would have done in your situation, which was what I said earlier. I would have sat down with Candace, I would have defended myself and say, you know what, by and large, I think she does fantastic work. By and large, I agree with her. So I don't see the point in going to war with her. However, that's your decision to make. And I do also understand that going to war with people is entertaining. And we are in the entertainment business. That's another thing to consider. It's pretty funny to go to war with people and start swinging. But we have to sit down and be professionals here. And as professionals, we have to sit and say, okay, are we really trying to win? Because if there's things you've said I could get upset about, but I don't actually give a shit. You could sit here right now and call me a nigger and say I'm a Jew, and I'd be like, you know what? I like you anyway. I'm going to like you whether you like it or not. I'm going to say, I like what Nick says. I think what he's doing is important. I don't give a fuck what he says about me. I like what he does. And I think that that's actually a degree of maturity that the left have that we don't have, because they hate us so much. They're so unified and binded by their hate for us that they'll never infight over small issues. They're too busy trying to kill us. And I think unless we can manage to get our heads around doing something similar, we're always going to end up, every time we get any power, just infighting and falling to pieces.
Well, I would say that as far as you three are concerned, I do believe you're all different. I think that you are different than Tucker, and I think that Tucker is different from Candace. And the reason I knew that is because when Candace went on with Tucker, Tucker said, oh, you know, this kid, he's saying my dad is in the CIA. And Candace said, yeah, and he said that I'm Russian intelligence. And Tucker said, yeah, but that's more likely than my dad being in the CIA or me being in the CIA. So in that moment, I was like, okay, so wait a second. These two are not on the same page. And I don't think you're on the same page with them even necessarily on this whole thing. And I guess what I would say about their attack is, in particular, Tucker's attack was to discredit me. And, you know, I don't want to drag you to a conversation that you don't know all the information about, because I don't think that's fair. But suffice to say, the particular thrust of his attack was to say that I'm a federal operative, was to say that I'm a federal agent. And you say that the question is, how do I handle that? Do I punch back really hard? Do I sort of take my lumps, so to speak? I would say that's a very pernicious and specific charge to make, which is supposed to say, and it was almost artful the way that he did it. He said, Nick says a lot of the right things, but you shouldn't listen to him because he's not who he says he is. And that sort of says to me that they are trying to block me from having influence. They're trying to destroy my reputation so that people don't listen. And in my show against Tucker, I sort of contrasted our two positions. If it's about the movement, for me, my movement says we're about American sovereignty. We want to break free from Israel. We want to break free from Jewish oligarchs. It's identitarian. America has a white character. It has a European character. It's racial. That has a lot to do with it. We need to shut down immigration. We need to get rid of this oligarchic syndicate that's running our country. And I would question, does Tucker conform to that? because repeatedly he insists, I have never talked about racial replacement migration. He insists, I'm not an enemy of Israel. I love Israel. I love going to Israel. Now, you know, what movement is he a part of? He's part of the movement where you work for Fox News for 20 years. And then when the whole world gets red pilled, now you're going to talk about Israel a little bit. Is the movement where your dad's in the CIA? Is the movement where you call up Trump and tell him to do a COVID lockdown? Is the movement where you say you hate Trump and you're ready to see him go away because you can't stand him? I don't know who Tucker is. I know who I am. And I would say that when push comes to shove, I have a much better case to make that I'm a credible voice than he does. I would make the case that my movement, to the extent that it's different, is much more consistent with what's right and where the people are at. If he wants to make it me versus him, be my guest, I don't think he's going to like where that goes on a long enough timeline. So that's why I said to Alex Jones yesterday, I said I would love to privately or publicly talk to Tucker. If he thinks I'm a fed, if he cares about the movement, then, you know, look, I'm not going away anytime soon. He needs to listen and take me seriously, obviously, because his attack on me backfired. I think he needs to put up or shut up. Have me on the show and debate the differences, make the case I'm a fed, or get with the fucking program. But that's kind of where I'm at with him. So I'm with you. I do have a consciousness of the movement, and I think that maybe Tucker plays a role in this movement, and maybe Candace plays a role, but I think they need to have a team player mentality. I can't be expected to have all the magnanimity in the world and all the patience and tolerate the kind of nonsense they're throwing my way. That's kind of my position, because I like you a lot, and I think, you know, when you and I had our disagreement on Twitter, you said, fuck it, let's get on a stream. I love that. I think that's honest. I think, you know, like you said, we don't agree on everything. And I've taken issue with things you've said and vice versa. But we can kind of talk about where we align. And first of all, we can talk. Yeah. I think we should expect the same thing from them as well. And in particular, Tucker. So that's sort of where I'm at, because I sort of see what you're saying, but I got to stick up for myself a little bit in this case.
Totally get it. And that's my point about the tweet I made. And I totally understand how the timing was suspect. But even recently, even today, one more thing I want to say when it comes to your movement as a whole. And once again, I need to stay in my lane because it's not my movement. It's yours, and you've built it. And most importantly, you've suffered for it. It wasn't handed to you. You suffered to build what you've built, which is why it's so strong and so powerful. Same as my movement, which, you know, I would say it's moved over now. I did my job, and I would argue that we moved into a new era where we have new concerns. When I was saying the things I was saying at the time, it was groundbreaking, and now everybody says them. And there's always going to be a part of you, which is a bit like, okay, so when it was dangerous to say these things, I did it, and now it's not dangerous, everyone says it, and it pisses you off a little bit. So I also understand perhaps when you just mentioned, you said there that Tucker's now saying it when everyone else is saying it. There's going to be a bit of personal, like, hey, I got debanked. I couldn't fly. I suffered for this. Like, I went to jail for what I said, and now everyone tweets it all day long and calls me a fed. Part of you is going to be like, well, that's ungrateful of the masses, isn't it? Because I was the one who was suffering to even say this stuff in the first place, which is a real important point. So I understand exactly where you're coming from. I totally get it. And one more thing with the whole Groyper movement as a whole, and I just want to say these things, and I'm saying them from an outside perspective. I am a friend of your movement. I consider myself a friend of yours. I believe in what you guys are doing. You're fucking hilarious. I'm not an enemy in any regard. But I do think that it's very difficult. We have to draw a line somewhere, and we have to have some degree of, well, what are the parameters then? Okay, Tucker did attack Nick, perhaps, or Candace attacked Nick, perhaps, fine. But if they are exposing X, Y, Z, is that worthwhile? And also, we have to come along and say, sometimes these tedious links can be exaggerated upon. Only a few hours ago, I retweeted Milo, and you wrote a tweet underneath it saying that this is very suspicious. This was a few hours ago. And I retweeted Milo because Milo defended me, saying that all these court cases against me, nobody can seem to put me in jail, nobody has any proof. I didn't think, Milo and Nick, I don't know the story of you two, to be honest. I now know you don't like each other. I don't know why. And with all due respect, I don't care. He defended me, so I retweeted it. I also retweeted a 3-person account who defended me with 3 followers. He could be a pedo. I don't fucking know. I just retweeted it. So sometimes there's too much noticing, and there's too many strings drawn, and there's too much, you know, people are looking for insult where it doesn't really exist. And I think that's one of the other things, separate to Candace and Tucker, because that was very deliberate against you, as you've just explained. One of the other things that I catch flack for from your movement is I breathe in the wrong direction, and perhaps a Jew was pointing that way when he breathed in 1941. And before you know it, I've got these spurgs spamming all over Twitter. And the reason that that's a bad thing is not because I give a shit. It's because it genuinely delegitimizes what you're trying to do.
Well, and I think you're legit. I think that, as far as the Milo thing is concerned, the only reason I even mentioned it is because Candace did her show with me. She did her show with Tucker, and then she does a show with Milo. Elon Musk replies to Milo calling me a fed. Then you come in and kind of, you didn't really pick a side, but you sort of said the Brigitte Macron thing's legit, and you said the Groypers talk too much about the Jews, or that they blame the Jews or something, and then you retweeted Milo. It looked like it was coordinated. I hope you understand that, and totally. I think that people need to scrutinize these things because, as you know, and you're brilliant on politics. I consider you a friend too, and I consider what you have built to be one of the most positive things that's happened in the 2020s. And I even come down on your side when you're arguing with Catholics like Matt Walsh, because honestly, a lot of the Catholic, white right, they're pussies when it comes to women. And a lot of the trad stuff is 100% steered by women. So, I mean, your thing on patriarchy, in my opinion, is indispensable. It's literally indispensable. And it's like, it's actually a good thing that we're in the Tate generation of young kids that are saying, what color is your Bugatti and all. I think it's actually a really good thing. But with that being said, as far as these connections are concerned, I think transparency is the solution. Yeah. You coming on this and saying, hey, I just retweeted him just because. Okay, valid, legitimate. I hear you. But in a lot of these cases, typically where there's smoke, there's fire. And I like to draw these connections because this is how politics operates. You do get these networks that come together. They're networks of patronage. They're networks of money. I'm not going to lie to you. A lot of people came to me privately and said, I'm on your side. I agree with you, but I can't speak out against Tucker because he's done things for me, because he's a friend of mine. And I've heard that from a lot of people. I'm not going to name names. Some of them said it publicly. Glenn Greenwald, Ian Carroll. They said a lot of nice things about me. Dave Smith, too. But they also said, I don't even really want to weigh in because I like Tucker. Now, in our political battle, we actually have to be willing to criticize people. We have to be willing to scrutinize those kinds of things. And someone like Tucker, he's got some explaining to do. He said he didn't know his dad was in the CIA. He lied. He did know that. Now, if we're coming for the Matrix, and insofar as the Matrix is the deep state, we're going to need an answer on that. I would like an answer on that, as well as some of these other things. And so that's where it's like, I agree with you. There is 100%, there can be a schizo tendency. And unfortunately, when you introduce concepts like Palantir, a limited hangout, when you introduce that to low IQ people, they'll start seeing it everywhere. And unfortunately, it is true. I've seen it. People like trip on their shoelace and say this was a Palantir limited hangout. It does happen. But in many cases, we actually do need transparency on some of these connections, because it's not lost on me that, like Tucker Carlson, one of his critiques of me, he said that I am delegitimizing someone like JD Vance. And I said, well, wait a second. Tucker had JD Vance on his show 46 times. Tucker made a personal appeal to Trump to choose Vance as his nominee. Now, Candace does not seem to be gung-ho about Vance. So there might be some, like I said, I think Candace is different than Tucker, and they're both different than you. But when Tucker came at me with that, I said, wait a second. He's calling me CIA. His dad is CIA. His friend Joe Kent is CIA. His buddy J.D. Vance works for Peter Thiel, who's a CIA contractor. That's a lot of CIA. That's a ton of CIA going on. And he lied about what he knew about the CIA. That's where I say, okay, sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. So, I 100% agree. There can be a tendency to get a little schizo, or maybe there's like a low IQ version of what we talk about. But I don't think I'm wrong about a lot of these connections. And, when you reposted Milo, and, maybe you'll admit
it could have come across as a bad look. And that's why it's helpful when you said, that's how I know you're legit. A lot of people behind the scenes tell me, you got to press Tate. Tate's the enemy. Remind him his dad was in the CIA. What I respect about you is you talk to me. I have your number. I talk to you. I've been on streams with you. You're transparent. You said your dad is in the CIA. We didn't have to dig that out of anywhere. And to me, that's the difference. Is there that transparency? If you're transparent, you know, we can ask the question, it gets answered, and we could say, okay, that's good enough. But if people hide or lie or they're not forthcoming, that's where there's a little scrutiny. So that's where I'm at on that. I do think it's important to look at some of those things.
No, it makes perfect sense. And just once again, from the very outside perspective, and I have to make it clear that I'm not as versed on all of these topics as a lot of the people who are watching this, but I've barely been online. I pop up online. I see there's this feud going on. The first thing I felt was a degree of sadness, to be honest. I mean, that's what I felt. And it was the same with Elon and Trump. I disagreed with Elon about H1B1. I think everybody did with a brain. Nobody wants that shit. It's a joke. But I think by and large, he's done fantastic things. I think that Twitter, if he never bought it, by now would be so fully locked down. I think he did help with the culture. I think he made some massive positive pushes in the correct direction. And maybe a lot of this is going to be personality driven. Perhaps this is just me from a personality perspective. But if somebody does something good, I try very hard to not forget what they've done. The internet is a very fast moving place. There's a lot of gratefulness on the internet because you can do something amazing on a Monday and everyone hates you on a Tuesday because it's fun to hate people and it's interesting and trolling is fun. And that's kind of how it works. But when Trump and Elon started arguing and there was the big division, I felt a degree of sadness. When I saw that Tucker Candace and you didn't get along, I really, perhaps I'm a sentimental old man, I felt like we'd all be better if we were to a degree on the same team. And we're never all going to agree on everything. I like what you said about the transparency point. That's fantastic. Me, from a personality perspective, if there's orcs at my gate, I'm prepared to work with somebody who I disagree with on 99% of the problems besides let's kill the orcs. So I noticed as well, a lot of the Groypers are constantly retweeting and constantly hammering Tristan for supporting J.D. Vance. Well, J.D. Vance is the only American politician who talks about the fact that we don't have any freedom of speech in Europe. J.D. Vance was the only politician who talked about the fact that Romania, the country we're in, the country that locked us up, overthrew their own election. He's the only one who called it out. So perhaps at a deeper level, you know things I do not know, or there's some things about him I would not like, perhaps. But initially, the initial battle in Europe, we can't even talk. He's the only one sticking up for us. And it's kind of like this infinitely divisible problem, which is a problem we're going to have with the entire movement, especially if we're successful. The more successful we are, the more fragmented it's going to become. As I said, if we had a white-only nation, the Italians would fight the Spanish, would fight the Germans, and before you know it, the North and the South would hate each other, and you'd be a Texan, and you'd be from Chicago, and everyone would hate each other again, even though we're all the same skin color. That's how it was before. That's why Europe was at constant war. So this infinite divisible problem is a real one, and we kind of have to find a way, especially, and this is me speaking out of turn because it's your movement, it's not my movement. But for you, I would say you have to kind of try to find a way to give some hard parameters and allow people who are not as intelligent as you, not as smart as you, not as well versed as you, and most of your fans are not going to be. That's why you're the star, to sit and say, okay, where does someone fall? Are they on the good side or the bad side? Because perhaps they did this and this and this, but by and large, they've done X, Y, Z. I always thought, in my infinite ignorance, that Ian Carroll was a good guy. He exposed things, and I watched his videos, and I thought, that's interesting, that's interesting, that's interesting. And then I saw his feed, and everyone was calling him a Jewish plant. And I'm like, what the fuck? Maybe I just don't know enough. Maybe I'm ignorant and dumb. But I was like, how the fuck is he a Jew? He's literally said the opposite the whole way through. So I do think this is some kind of issue which is going to be nearly impossible to solve because the internet's the internet, and this is how it works. And also, I will state this, even my movement, there are people in my movement who are retards, and they'll go to the gym and they'll hit their chest and they'll tell every woman to fuck off. And, you know, they'll walk around with a gun saying they're a G, and they're fucking retards, and they're part of my movement. And that's going to be part of every single movement. That's part of it. I just think we need to try our very best if we want to make a serious political and genuine change. You're right. We have to draw connections. We have to notice patterns. That's what you've done fantastically. That's what you've built your brand on. And perhaps my transparency allows me to sit down and explain that my father was discharged dishonorably for not following orders and that we never even got a military pension and grew up destitute. You can all look that up online. Perhaps my transparency helps me, yes. But sometimes I see so much stuff being thrown around. I always like to think of things from the enemy's perspective. If I was them and I saw you fighting with Candace, fighting with Tucker, and then I retweet someone and then you say I'm part of them, and they're sitting there knowing none of us are part of them, they're laughing their fucking ass off. And I just think we have to be very conscious of that. That's the only point I'm making.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I just, then it's got to be all in the family because they instigated with me. I would have been glad to join up with Tucker. And honestly, here's what I'll say on the stream. I still am. Because it's true that Tucker is getting torched by a lot of his erstwhile Jewish or pro-Israel allies. Yep. There's no question about that. And same with Candace Owens. Yep. Candace and Tucker, and to your point, just to demonstrate, because I think I'm objective and I think I'm magnanimous, I think that Candace and Tucker, you're 1,000% correct. They have brought a lot of people closer to the truth. There is just no question. Candace with the women, Tucker with the normies. And, Candace with the normie women, I suppose, and you as well. I mean, but we're talking about them in this case, and you without a doubt as well. So I do believe there's room for cooperation. It's like we said before, though, if that's sort of my perspective, I'm sort of coming to Candace to join up, but she's telling me you're a racist anti-Semite, and I'd like to cooperate with Tucker, but he's calling me a fed, and I'm this loser and all this. It's like, so I would extend the olive branch to someone like Tucker. And me, I have such a consciousness for the team. Me and Candace have a very vicious rivalry right now. For me, it is, and I say this, my right hand to God, it is not personality driven. It is not ego driven. I could forgive her tomorrow. I've called her a bitch like 100 times. And I know you probably don't love that, but I've called her a bitch a bunch of times. I could apologize for that tomorrow, and I could sit down and have dinner and be best friends tomorrow. The question is there that willingness on the other side to get on the same page? Is there that willingness to kind of open up the space for someone who is a little bit further to the right? I do believe that.
I get it. So I've got a question for the sake of our debate. So I would argue, and of course, once again, this is full of presuppositions. I'm just guessing here. I would argue that there's a degree of disingenuity when it comes to people saying that her Bridget series is not important or it's trash. And I think you made a clip on it. I didn't watch the whole clip, but you said something about how Macron is an enemy of Israel or something along these lines. And why is she going for Macron? I truthfully, and I'm saying this from the heart, and I've only watched 2 episodes of her series. I haven't even watched the whole thing. And I didn't even watch your whole clip. But I don't see how anyone can not think that's good journalism and not think it's hilarious. I really don't think it's genuine for people to sit and say that series was a setup somehow and she's working for the Russians somehow and that she's somehow working for the Jews because she did that. And I think that it's people disliking her, so instantly tarnishing her work. And I think that it's very important for us as professionals to be able to sit down and say, even if my worst enemy, I can sit and say, I don't like that person, but that work was good. Like, I think Matt Walsh, by and large, is not even a bad person. I think he just has no impact on the culture at all. I don't think anybody cares what he says. But when I saw some of his clips when he was making fun of the trannies, it was funny. Like, okay, cool. That's good work. Like, I don't care who makes the work if the work is good. And I noticed after your argument with her, everyone was saying that her Brigitte series was bullshit. I don't think it's unimportant, and I don't think it was bullshit. I think it was actually very informative, and I think it was quite an interesting story. And I think that if Macron is fucking his dad, we should know. And I also think that it's fucking hilarious how triggered he is. And I would argue that normally you, if you didn't have a beef with Candace, would also be saying the same thing, that this is funny, and Macron's pissed, and this is all hilarious. Or do you genuinely, your emotions, your feelings for Candace aside, really think that piece of work is somehow bad work to do?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's actually the opposite. I liked Candace last year, and I hated the Brigitte Macron thing. I just didn't say anything because I didn't want to mess with her thing. I'll give you a counterexample. She did an interview with Phil Turney, who's a survivor of the USS Liberty. I thought that was excellent. I thought that was brilliant. Got huge coverage, totally drove the conversation forward. I could, I'm objective. I'm honest. I tell it like it is. I do have a major problem with Candace right now, but that was awesome. And unquestionably so. I'll tell you my issue with the Brigitte Macron thing. It's a couple of things. One, I think it's weird. I think it's weird that Candace is so hung up on the French president, because in America, we just don't really talk about Europe. We don't really care about Europe that much. It's just not something we're engaged in. So for her to have this laser-like focus on that, to me, it kind of gives me a weird feeling from the beginning. And then you delve into kind of the history there. And for a long time, there's been an effort to go after Macron from this crew. Like, I don't know if you know, but back in 2017, there was this huge effort to say that Macron was gay, and that was being pushed by Russian media. It was being pushed by Sputnik in Russia Today. They were quoting Julian Assange. They leaked all Macron's email 2 days before the election in 17. So there's been, for like 8 years, this concerted campaign to attack Macron personally, call him gay, say he's married to his dad. So that's another thing, is like it comes back over and over again. Then you get into the person pushing this, the guy, Xavier Poussard. He wrote the book, Becoming Brigitte. This guy's crazy. Like, the guy that originated the theory, it's very fringe in France. He believes in the QAnon stuff. He thinks he's working for Trump. He thinks he's working for Putin. The guy's nuts. And when you get down into the actual information, at the end of the day, their proof is that there's a photograph of the person they say Brigitte is as a child, and using this Chinese facial recognition, it says there's an 80% match to Brigitte Macron today. And I don't think that's super good journalism. I think the evidence is flimsy. And I would say maybe there's something going on there. Maybe Brigitte Macron is weird or something. But to me, the evidence is very flimsy. So that's my problem with it. And the reason that I even call it out, why not let it alone? The reason I call it out is because, one, if it's an angle from Russia or some other thing, then that needs to be called out by itself. But two, I think it's so kooky, it just makes us look bad. I think it's one of those things where maybe people watch the USS Liberty show, but then if you're talking about aliens and secret transgenders and the Frankists and, space isn't real, it's like then we just look like we're crazy. So that's the other thing. But it's actually in reverse of what you said. If I liked Candace, I would not talk about my problems with it at all. If we had a working relationship, but, since we're at odds, I'm more willing to criticize her. So it's totally the opposite.
Well, perhaps this is just a personal preference thing, but I think it's extremely important if we find out that the leader of a European nation, especially the nation which just overthrew the election here, by the way, one of the most important economies on the planet, and Europe is, by and large, America's ally, will have to be against China for the coming decades. If there is an elite pedophile ring which is in charge of his country, especially if you want to tie this to Epstein and everything else, and the fact that Keir Starmer is gay and all these things, the fact that we have all these homosexuals in power, I think would largely affect the culture. And we just talked about how the culture is so important. I would argue that it doesn't make us look kooky for investigating that. Very much like you said, we need to, if there's smoke, there's fire. And if there's the timing is weird, or there's a string here, or there's a link there. I think that she did a fantastic job on the series, and I think it's pretty important. And I'm just surprised from a personal level you don't find it hilarious that Macron's having a breakdown. I just thought that you would find it funny like I did. When I saw the legal letters, me and Tristan were laughing our ass off. It's funny. The same as Keir Starmer talking about me all day. I think it's funny these people get triggered. Maybe it's just me liking the underdog. Maybe it's just me liking that we have some degree of power to actually influence the emotions of these people who are suppressing us, especially in Europe, so heavily. So I was just surprised by your take on that. And my conclusion in my mind was, he's pretending that's not good work when it's clearly hilarious because he doesn't like Candace. And you've given your answer, which I respect. I was just highlighting why I thought that was weird, because I actually thought that was a fantastic series. And I think if it turns out she is right, I think that's very important. I would argue that's extremely important. And I mean, right now we have the problem with Keir Starmer in the UK. He got caught fucking Ukrainian rent boys. That we're not allowed to say that. I'm about to catch another charge for saying that right now. I'm trapped in Europe. And perhaps maybe you're saying America first, and as Americans, we don't care. I'm in Europe. They're the ones throwing me in jail. They're the ones fucking with my life. They're the ones who are constantly watching everything I say. They're the ones watching this stream right now, trying to raise charges on me. And the Western world, by and large, is the same thing. I think that you even said earlier at the beginning of this that America was founded on European white heritage. So we don't want to lose the ancient countries. We don't want to lose the original lands of the people we're trying to restore to glory. So I think she's doing fantastic work. And that's my personal view on it. I think she's doing fantastic work with it. And I was just surprised you disagreed on that point. That's all.
Yeah, well, and that's legitimate. I guess for me, you know, your point about it's funny, like that does resonate with me because I thought that way for a long time. I would look at something like that and say, oh, you know, we're doing it for the lulz. We're doing it, you know, because we're trolling Macron. We're trolling everybody. But what I have come to learn over the years is that a lot of the things that seem random or seem like they're based on hype, they're all coordinated. And that doesn't mean that everything...
That is true. That is absolutely true. And there are systems and there are groups and there are piles of money being thrown around. You're absolutely right about that. I want to make it clear. You're completely correct.
Yeah, so that's where and I'm not saying, and I said it on Bradley Martin, as far as Candace is concerned, I said everything I say about the Brigitte Macron thing is speculative. You know, is it a Russian operation? I said that is a theory. That's like a working postulate that I haven't really even researched, but just that's sort of where my gut says. And we just do need to be mindful. As I grow older, I see these kinds of memes, trends, and it's easy when you're 18 and you have no orientation of politics. You kind of like, you know, when you're a kid, you don't know how this stuff works. And for me, I was a young edgelord. I was a young